edge of MDF. Then another straight edge along that MDF tells me if I've got parallel walls the right thickness. I can sneak up on this, take a little off, and stop and check as frequently as I need until I can get that straight edge to ride along there perfectly even. I've got to have a pretty consistent wall in order to be able to do that. To create consistent shaped corners, I've drilled a hole here 5/8 of an inch diameter. I'll take these side pieces off and create a little template. Then I can sneak up on that template, try to get a pretty consistent shaped corner on all four corners of each one of these bowls. Here I'm using a pencil and I'm going to hit this with some 80 grit on a sanding block. I'll stop the lathe, and this will give me a very quick feedback on where any high spots are. The rest of the sanding, 5-inch power sanding, I did have to start with 80 grit, went up through just to 180 because I'll finish the sanding by hand after this is together where I can sand with the grain. Here I'm just marking this where it'll get cut off so I can get a consistent dimension from small end to big end. I'm not going to part it off completely, that'll be done later. So for turning the small ends, I'll use the large plate of MDF that I created when I first mounted these before the turning. I'll create a jam chuck here that'll perfectly center it and use the same keeper ring. So when you do the keeper ring, make sure you don't make it too big so that you can get a double use out of it. This fits very nicely. The rubber pads will protect the wood surface from any damage that might occur when tightening this ring. And get rid of this faceplate now, go back to the lathe, make sure it's running true. Some parting tool work here, and there goes the piece of maple. Check the squareness here, clean up this end. I'll round the corners to try to match what I did on the big end, and then sand this just as I did the other pieces. It was got to be repeated 3 more times now. But here's the first one, and things are looking good so far. Well, it seems a shame to cut them apart, but that's the next step. A quick couple of cuts here confirm that my bandsaw table is at a perfect 90 degrees. Those parallel kerf marks confirm that. I've protected my sanded surfaces by putting a little white tape on my table, and then cutting very slowly, really concentrating to keep that blade on the maple. I don't want to hit those metal rods that are in there somewhere. Turn this around and exit out through where I just cut, and then cut the other side. With all 4 of these cut apart, now it's a matter of doing some disc sander work. Once again, I want a perfect 90, so I'm checking that with a pencil on the end of this parallel piece of wood. That pencil should disappear very evenly. That's confirmed. Now I'll start to get rid of the maple. I'll do it in stages so as not to overheat the wood. I didn't like the way the disc was cutting. It's time for a new disc. That one, the old one, had been on there for a while. This new one will cut so much nicer, and I'll be able to remove wood at a slower speed. That'll give me a fighting chance to get really perfect surfaces. I'm actually going to slow this disc bit. I'll do the final sanding with this thing just barely turned. Normally in a ribbon project at this stage, when I've got everything in half balls ready to be put together, I would take the pieces all together, label the intersecting seams so there's no confusion during the assembly. But in this project, I've discovered, looking at my model, there are 4 pairs that are all identical. For example, if I make 4 assemblies with a half that way and a half that way, there's those 2. And then if I go to my next 2 over here, I take this and just turn it around, there's those 2. And then I'd go around, turn it around again, there's those 2. So there's 4 identical parts. So I'm going to glue 4 pair just like that together. What I've done is I've put blue tape on my surfaces here just to protect from the glue squeeze out, so I'll have less cleanup to do. I've created these cleats and clamped them on very tightly. They've got a little piece of rubber pad to protect the wood surface, and I've cleaned everything, and I've rehearsed this at least once so that I know, the steps to go through. So let's put some glue on here and see if we can't get this clamped together. So the first thing I'm going to do is prop this up and pin it with a spring clamp. I'm checking my 2 ends. Then I'll put a spring clamp, then I'll put a quick clamp across there. This is where good planning pays off. A little rehearsal and what looks like a complex clamping job actually was pretty easy to accomplish. Well, it's the next morning. The moment of truth is right around the corner. Before I put these 4 together, though, I want to get these seams all cleaned up, do some sanding. Might as well take advantage of my clean, easy access to those 4 joints. Now I'll do a dry fit, getting all 4 of these together to see if I've been accurate each step of my project. And lo and behold, it really did fit together perfectly. There'll be no desander adjustment necessary, at least I don't think so. I've picked out 2 opposite seams to put those together. When these 2 glue jobs, this and another one just like it, are done, I'll have 2 halves of my ribbon ready for the final glue job. This is, again, looks kind of complicated, but with good planning, some rehearsal, it's not too bad. It goes together pretty nicely. So after cleaning up those last 2 seams, it's time to do a dry fit on the final 2 seams. Everything looks great. It's time to glue it together. These last 2 seams have to be done at the same time for obvious reasons. Plenty of glue and the same clamping pressure, getting everything aligned every which way. It's nice to have a second person help you with this, but it really can be done with 1 person. Plenty of clamping pressure to drive all that excess glue out, and never forget to go around and check the tightness of those clamps before you walk away. The cleanup of those seams, same procedure, getting the tape off there and attacking this with a variety of sanding disc and some hand sanding. The hand sanding I think is important. Sanding with the grain gives it that final good look. I'm going to put a coat of Zinsser wax-free sanding sealer. I'll buff this out, sand it out, and then I'll put another coat of the sanding sealer before proceeding with my final finish. For finish, it was once again the Minwax wipe-on poly, 3 coats of gloss, and a final coat of satin. The glass top, again, was purchased from Glass Tops Direct on the internet. I'm pretty happy with this table. I think it's quite a unique piece of furniture.